Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna. Today is a very special day in the Gaudiya Vaishnava and our Gaudiya Vaishnava practice and practical application. It's the appearance day of Gadadhar Pandit, Sri Gadadhar Pandit, who is the Shakti of the Lord. This is Shakti Tattva, the internal potency of the Lord. And so we're going to hear about Sri Gadadhar Pandit's life and pastimes, and also Siddhanta. So I'll start there first, actually, and I'll read from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this is the Adi Lila, chapter 10, and this is text 15. Bada Shaka Gadadhara Pandit Goshani Tenho Lakshmi Rupatara Samakehanai. Gadadhar Pandit, the fourth branch, is described as an incarnation of the pleasure potency of Sri Krishna. No one, therefore, can equal him. And we're talking about the branches of the Chaitanya tree. Purport: in the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, it is stated, Sri Krishna's pleasure potency, formerly known as Vrindavaneshwari, is now personified in the form of Sri Gadadhar Pandit in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami has pointed out that in the shape of Lakshmi, the pleasure potency of Krishna, she was formerly very dear to the Lord as Shama Sundara Vallabha. The same Shama Sundara Vallabha is now present in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes as Gadadhar Pandit. Formerly, as Lalita Saki, she was always devoted to Srimati Radharani. Thus, Gadadhar Pandit is simultaneously an incarnation of Srimati Radharani and Lalita Saki. So, that's the ontological position of Gadadhar Pandit as the internal potency, along with Lalita. Srimati Radharani has taken up the service in Gaura Lila of supporting and facilitating the Lord's pastimes. And there are so many instances of this. So when Nimai was born, approximately a year or two later, Gadadhar Pandit also appeared. He was actually appeared very close by in the same village, very near to the house of Jagannath Mishra in Mayapur. And Gadadhar Pandit's parents were Sri Madhava Mishra, his father, and his mother was Sri Ratnavati Devi. And they were neighbors, and actually Ratnavati Devi thought of Sachi Mata as her own sister. So they were very close in the village. So when Mahaprabhu and Gadadhar would get together, they were immediately, upon Gadadhar Pandit's appearance in this world, they were immediately inseparable, when they met as children. They were immediately inseparable. They would play together, Sometimes they would go to Sachi Mata and Jagannath Mishra's home. Sometimes they would go to Sri Madhava and Ratnavati's home. So they would play together, just like you hear about when young friends play together. And then when they got a little bit older, they went to the same tola, the same school, and they were classmates. They were study mates, and they would sort of engage each other in scriptural debate, or they were just basically study partners. And they couldn't be separated. They were actually completely inseparable in their daily lives. Whatever one did, the other did. If one went to take bath in the Ganga, or wanted to take bath, and the other would tag along. So they were constantly together, in all respects. And we know that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared as the combined form of Radha and Krishna in order to taste the mellows of love that was enjoyed between Radha and Krishna. So how is it that Gadadhar Pandit was also Lalita and Sri Radhe, and also Lord Chaitanya, and was the combined form of Sri Radhe and Shyamasundara? Well, the acharyas have stated that the bhav has been sort of separated, the mood's been separated, and the very unique bhav of the conjugal ras of Lord Krishna and Radha was encapsulated in Lord Chaitanya. That's actually what he wanted to taste. And the support, serving mood of Sri Radhe and Lalita Saki, because Lalita is Sri Radhe's helpmate in that respect. She's always serving Sri Radhe as Sri Radhe serves Sri Krishna. But that serving, support, facilitating mood was encapsulated in Gadadhar Pandit. So Gadadhar Pandit, as Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit grew older, their personalities were abundantly different and made clear to everyone around them. Lord Chaitanya, as we know, in his youth was quite a prankster. He was doing things very unconventional at the time, such as, screaming in girls' ears and, doing all kind of, I guess could be called rascal, or, just far out actions towards the girls in Navadvip at the time. Meanwhile, Gadadhar Pandit, as he, when he started out, he was actually a very composed, serene, sober, very thoughtful. He wasn't prone to that sort of kind of antics that Lord Chaitanya was propounding in his youth. Lord Chaitanya would grab people who were chanting Gayatri in the ocean there, and or in the bodies of water, and drag them underneath, and he would disrupt a lot of the thoughts of the residents, and everybody loved it. I mean, that was a kind of a mirror reflection of how he was in Gokul as a baby, when he was doing those things, those sort of funny things with stealing butter and that kind of thing. It was just a little bit different in Navadvip with Lord Chaitanya. So they grew up together in that way, and it kind of reminds me in like any comic duo, comedic team, there would be a straight man and a, and the not straight man, the funny man. And so that's how it was. Was their kind of Ras. Was their relationship. They would, of course, do everything together, but Gadadhar seemed to be the voice of reason a lot of times. Not that he was correcting or anything Lord Chaitanya, but he was just always quietly in the background. He was kind of holding it down and supporting Lord Chaitanya's, efforts, as it were, at the time. And there are many pastimes with Gadadhar Pandit and Lord Chaitanya that we've heard about. A few notable, I'll just mention a few notable pastimes. Actually, Pundarik Vidyanidhi was the third, Gadadhar Pandit's the fourth branch of the Chaitanya tree, but Pundarik Vidyanidhi was considered the third branch. Because actually Pundarik Vidyanidhi is the incarnation of King Vrishabhanu. So, a little bit subordinate to that in this pastime was Gadadhar Pandit. So one of the times when Gadadhar Pandit he actually was supporting and facilitating a lot of the pastimes, in a very hands-off and quiet way, because he was just always there. And we know these types of people who are amongst us. They're very kind of solemn, but not, not morose, but very solemn, very, very kind of quiet, and, and Gadadhar Pandit was also the greatest scholar, at the time. He was from the get-go, whereas it took a while for Nimai to kind of pin down his wonderful devotion to Krishna, because at first he was just interested in debating, and he was kind of, not really apparently a devotee. But from the get-go, Gadadhar Pandit was always, from the first minute, outwardly a devotee of Krishna. So he would actually read the Bhagavatam, and he would, read it out loud even to others and speak about the Bhagavatam. So that's why he was called Pandit, because he was a scholar, he was a teacher, he was a guru, to many. He had that role as sort of the upstanding, sober, dhira, type person. And in the pastimes at Navadvip, I'm going to say that was really needed, because apart from Advaita Acharya, who was elder, much elder, and sometimes, as we know, the youth don't really listen to elder so much. They might discount them in some way, and we find that throughout with the pastimes of Lord Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. They were always sort of mock fighting, and they weren't really, Lord Nityananda wasn't really giving so much apparent respect to Advaita Acharya, and vice versa, So that was, but with Gadadhar Pandit, he was in that peer group. He was in their peer group, so he was able to, seems like sort of inflict a little more of that sobriety as far as Krishna consciousness goes, or the seriousness of study of Lord Krishna and Krishna Katha, like that. So he was quite a reserved person in that way. And one time he went to go see a personality who was ostensibly a great devotee of the Lord, because he was always very hungry for Krishna Katha. He wanted to hear about Krishna. And he was taken to see by Mukunda, who was a close associate of Lord Chaitanya, he was taken to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who, was well known as a great devotee of Krishna. But when he arrived, Gadadhar, being the sort of reserved pundit that he was, saw Pundarik Vidyanidhi, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a well-to-do person, and he had a lot of luxuries considered at the time, even by today's measure, I would say, if just having been in the Mayapur and Navadvip area, there wasn't really a lot of grand mansions with, so much opulence. There wasn't so much of that there. So when Gadadhar Pandit went to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he noticed he was living in a very grand style. He had a very opulent bedstead with soft, cloth and pillows and white, cloud-like fluffy sheets and blankets. And, that's even now, that's considered quite like, wow, you don't see that very much in Mayapur. And so when he saw this, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi was just sort of sitting there on the bed and very dapper and, chewing pan and very neat sort of hair, slicked back, with fragrant oils. Gadadhar Pandit was like, whoa, he was a little sorry he came to see this person, because he was thinking in his mind that Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a materialist. And to outward appearances, it might seem that way, but Mukunda knew different. And it seems like Mukunda was taking Gadadhar Pandit to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi for many reasons. And I imagine that one of which was to have him see practically that there's so many different types of devotees of Krishna, and you never know what's in anybody's heart. We have no idea what's in anybody's heart. So when Gadadhar Pandit sort of saw him, he was, taken aback, and Mukunda could see this, and Mukunda, being the expert singer, we've heard all about his beautiful. Even Lord Chaitanya would just melt in ecstatic ecstasy, when he heard Mukunda singing verses from the Bhagavatam or the various songs about Krishna. So when Mukunda started singing a Bhagavatam verse, a very beautiful Bhagavatam verse that describes Krishna, Gadadhar Pandit witnessed Pundarik Vidyanidhi completely lose his composure. He started rolling on the ground and thrashing about, and became sort of disheveled, and all of his bed, his room, everything was a wreck. And then Gadadhar Pandit, and this wasn't something that somebody could sort of act like, and it wasn't an act. I mean, you can tell the difference, as we heard about with Haridas Thakur and the snake charmer. You can tell the difference between somebody that's actually, just have lost their composure because of love of Krishna, and somebody's trying hard to make it look like that. But he could see that Pundarik Vidyanidhi was, he was completely devoted, 100%. And then Gadadhar Pandit, being the great scholar and devotee of Krishna himself, was very remorseful that he had thought of Pundarik Vidyanidhi in a harsh or unfavorable way, and he, begged him to initiate him. So that was his sort of first, I'll say, visible, kind of because his facade, Gadadhar Pandit's facade was very, he was just very staunch. He was staunch, although internally he was probably the most devoted to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at that time, although not outwardly. So, he took initiation and he continued on his exchanges with the Lord, and the Lord was very pleased. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with Gadadhar Pandit's surrender and his devotion as well, which was just constant. Then, at some point, Gadadhar Pandit, of course, constantly serving Lord Chaitanya, just constantly serving Lord Chaitanya when he was in the home and he was there studying, and things are getting ready to shift, but he was constantly serving him, and one time he even brought Lord Chaitanya some pan, and he was in his internal, he was very internal at the time, meditating on Krishna. At some point, we know that Lord Chaitanya the switch flipped, and then he was outwardly also very, devoted to Lord Krishna, outwardly, after he had his time of being just a, very contrary type of a young man. But Gadadhar Pandit had brought Lord Chaitanya some pan, because he was still serving him very faithfully throughout all of this, with all of Lord Chaitanya's antics and transformation and his, we know so many stories about Lord Chaitanya's challenging the Digvijay and, so many things. And Lord Sri Gadadhar was just sort of in the background, quietly lifting him up, quietly supporting him. And also, to some extent, he was a very confidential servant. He was kind of helping him to be a little more composed, I'll say, because sometimes when Lord Chaitanya went off and was roaring and, had so much, emotion, it was a little overwhelming for many, But Gadadhar Pandit was the one that was able to kind of calm him down. So he brought him some pan, and Lord Chaitanya started roaring, where is that blackish boy in the yellow garments? Why can't I see him? I need to see him now, very distraught, crying like that, just in one of the moods of just absorption and 100% bhav. And Gadadhar Pandit said, oh, well, he's trying to help him realize he's always in your heart, it's okay. But Lord Chaitanya started ripping at his chest, trying to see him, I want to see him, I have to see him now. And Gadadhar Pandit was able to stop him and compose him. So he was really actually, in that confidential and supportive mood to try to help or facilitate Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tasting that ras. Because for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or for Krishna, it was non-different. It was a little bit new, it felt like it was a little bit new for him to taste this kind of ecstatic and overwhelming love, I think we all have that experience, and when you kind of, the consciousness is honed to a degree that you can actually, it feels like a level up. You can actually understand something a little bit better, a little bit more fully, And that's obviously for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this was a Leela, but outwardly this was a new ideal for him, that he was able to taste this beautiful and ecstatic and just the tastiest ras he was tasting. And Gadadhar Pandit was, right there. He was right there. It says he's, Gadadhar Pandit, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says he's always to his left. He's always to his left, and he's always there ready to hand Lord Chaitanya whatever he requires, as the Shakti, the internal potency. And at some point, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to take sannyas, we know, to be a little bit more serious, or outwardly, so people would take him more seriously. And then he couldn't reside in his home or near his home. Sannyas means to go. And so he made plans to go to Jagannath Puri. Of course, Sachi Mata was extremely distraught, as we know, that she wouldn't see her Nimai on a daily and regular basis, or cook for Nimai, etc. And she sort of confided in Gadadhar, please, go with Nimai and take care of him. And of course, Gadadhar had already, that was a foregone conclusion, that he was going to accompany Nimai wherever he went. And he did. So when he went to Puri, and he was there for quite some time, Gadadhar Pandit accompanied him, and there was many pastimes there, many beautiful pastimes with Lord Jagannath, and he was starting to understand that the bhav, or the longing to see Krishna, was growing. It was becoming almost to a fevered pitch. And from Jagannath Puri, the Lord decided that, or made plans, he wanted to, of course, tour the places of pilgrimage, but he was also going to particularly go to Vrindavan. He wanted to go to Vrindavan, where all, Krishna Bhaktas go, is Vrindavan. And of course, Gadadhar was going to go with him. There was no question in Gadadhar Pandit's mind. And Lord Chaitanya was like, no, you should be here. You should stay in Puri, help the devotees, enliven the devotees, hold it down. Because at that point, he was extremely confidential personality for Lord Chaitanya. So they were basically non-different, they were kind of the same ilk, it said. So, he wanted him to stay there and minister to everyone that was there. But Gadadhar Pandit that idea was just intolerable. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had already implored Gadadhar Pandit he set him up to worship Gopinath there, because there was already some separation going on. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and sannyas means, and as we've probably all read about that, I'm not going to say horrible time, but that time when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and everybody was bereft. As soon as his hair was cut, everybody understood, or everybody could understand that this was a shift. There was going to be a shift in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Before, Lord Chaitanya was just there. He was dancing around Nadia. He had inaugurated Sankirtan. He was, creating so much awareness about the Lord Krishna. And everybody was, whoever he came in contact with was becoming a devotee, so there was just so many devotees. But as soon as he decided to take sannyas so he could be taken more seriously, and, it's understandable because Nimai, up until that point, had sort of a reputation. It's interesting how they say first impressions are always very lasting. So he had sort of a little bit of a low-key reputation as a type of personality that maybe was not that serious. He was serious when he needed to be serious, but sometimes he was just in ecstasy. So taking sannyas was that way to have everybody understand. Again, this was outward appearances that he was extremely serious, and everybody understood that, including Gadadhar Pandit. He could understand that, okay, some things are going to change, and Gadadhar Pandit was just like, I'm just going to hold tight to his feet. So in the meantime, when Gadadhar Pandit had came with him to Jagannath Puri, he situated him in a place, and it was near the ocean, and he was worshiping a deity, Gopinath deity. Yeah. Well, but first it was Gopinath, and there was there was a tota near the ocean. And then, when it was sort of time for Lord Chaitanya to leave, he told Gadadhar, okay, so you're here worshiping Gopinath. This is when you also take Kshetra sannyas, and you have to stay here, and you have to worship Gopinath, and you have to hold it down. Kshetra sannyas is remaining in that holy place that you're kind of, I won't say married to, but you're the main or principal personality that can keep things kind of on an even keel, keep things regulated, or not really regulated, but keep it, sort of keep it going. And Gadadhar Pandit, at the time when there wasn't that sort of idea that Lord Chaitanya was going to leave, because he had many pastimes in Puri. He was there, he was, seeing Jagannath, he was loving Jagannath, he was, he was doing kirtan for Jagannath. Gadadhar Pandit agreed, okay, because, we know when, especially if we have someone that we're trying to facilitate in their Krishna consciousness, sometimes we must do things that aren't really something that we would choose to do. We might like to do something else, but to help this personality, we're thinking, okay, I'll do that thing that they're requesting, right? So he did as he was requested. He, kind of ostensibly took Kshetra sannyas, not formally. He was still wearing white, But as soon as Lord Chaitanya decided to leave, and Gadadhar Pandit said, okay, I'm ready to leave with him, Lord Chaitanya was like, no, you can't leave you can't leave. You've taken Kshetra sannyas. This is your place. You're worshiping Gopinath. This is your place. And Gadadhar Pandit basically said, to hell with this worship of Gopinath. To hell with Kshetra sannyas. I need to go with you. I want to go with you. There's not even a question that I wouldn't be with you. And Lord Chaitanya, somehow or other had to convince Gadadhar Pandit that, no, that wasn't your place now. It's a very important service to me that you stay here and you worship Gopinath. Because for everybody that was going to remain in Puri, That was their strength. That was their substance. Gadadhar Pandit was their pillar that they could actually rely on, their support. And, with great pain, Gadadhar Pandit agreed that he would do that. And so he stayed and he worshipped Gopinath, and Lord Chaitanya, left him quite bereft. And it said that when he left, Gadadhar Pandit aged quite a lot. He was only, I think, 48 at the time. And then when he left, he could barely move, he was debilitated, practically incapacitated without that, lifeline of Lord Chaitanya. Because, as the Shakti, as the support, as the facilitator, as the servant, the direct servant, the dearmost servant of Lord Chaitanya, when your object of service is not there, what are you doing? How would you feel if you, right? You can't serve. You can't do that thing that you're supposed to be doing. You can't actually do what you're prescribed, what your, constitutional position is. I mean, we know this is a different thing. He's not a jiva. So he was very morose. He was very sad, and he couldn't bear the separation. And from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu too, the separation was extremely intense. But also, since he had given Gadadhar Pandit that vow, to take that vow, implored him to take that vow of Kshetra Sannyas, obviously he needed to uphold that as well. So there was a lot of integrity that had to be remaining intact. There was this sort of support pillar in Jagannath Puri that needed to remain intact. And, he was worshipping Gopinath, which is not different than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? But, the Vapu was so attractive that Gadadhar Pandit was just going to throw it out the window, And we can understand that. So when he started getting to the point that he couldn't take care of that deity, he couldn't even put a garland around the deity. He was so debilitated. The deity reciprocating with him so nicely, and this was the Tota Gopinath deity because he was in a little garden. He actually sat down, which is very, very unusual for a deity. The deity form is usually there's some level of Aishwarya. This is worship of the Archa Vigraha is, there's some awe and reverence. There must be because, you're the servant, etc. But actually, this reciprocation with Tota Gopinath deity or Tota Gopinath, Sri Tota Gopinath and Gadadhar Pandit was actually it was just the most heartwarming and the sweetest reciprocation that one could possibly imagine, that the deity, it's kind of like Shakshi Gopal. The deity was actually serving the beloved servant, and that's actually, it's unheard of, but it's so encouraging, to know that Krishna's there. He's always there for us. He's always wanting to help us serve him more intently and to give us that sort of pull and that bhav to actually want to continue through whatever condition, whatever comes. He gives those like little lifelines to It feels like, when you're sort of drowning, it just feels like a life preserver. He gives us those little things to help us see him as a person, and also help us to want to serve him even more. And that reciprocation is, tighter and tighter and tighter. It's very sweet. So Tota Gopinath sat down. He sat down, and he was able to, then Gadadhar Pandit was able to, reach things. And, it wasn't, because he's a big deity. If you know the Tota Gopinath deity, he's, even in the sitting position, he's quite large. And like if you look at me sitting here, I'm much shorter than, when I'm standing, and I'm almost 5'9". So, when he sat down, he was able to easily maneuver and get around and decorate and offer foodstuffs and like that. So in great separation, Gadadhar Pandit served the Gopinath deity. And then, later on, when Mahaprabhu was ready to wrap up his eternal pastimes on this planet, at the time, they're manifest pastimes, not his eternal pastimes, but his manifest pastimes. What did he do? He could have done anything. I mean, we hear about so many different ways. We've heard about, how Krishna disappears, different like that. But he, instead of like a mystical, magical kind of thing, I mean, this is mystical and magical. He came back, and what did he do? To reciprocate again with his beloved Gadadhar, his internal potency, that he was really obliged to. He entered into the deity, he entered into Tota Gopinath, and you could see where, and you can still see where, and Gadadhar Pandit was finally, satisfied. He was finally, then when he was serving that deity, he could understand, okay, I'm serving my beloved now. I'm serving my Krishna. I'm serving my worshipful Lord, So he was able to continue for a little bit of time after that. Of course, the separation from the Vapu was overwhelming, and then also Gadadhar Pandit, followed him into that pastime of entering into Tota Gopinath. So it's just a very beautiful reciprocation from front to back, from the time Gadadhar Pandit appeared a year or two after Lord Chaitanya, inseparable. They were inseparable in mind and in spirit the whole time that Lord Chaitanya was here to deliver the fallen souls and to inaugurate the Sankirtan mission and to taste the love that, Gadadhar Pandit had for him. I mean, he still had that incredible, unparalleled love, just unabashed. And, this could be unpacked so much more with songs from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's so much Bhaktivinoda Thakur has talked about with the Gadai, Gora dynamic, because Gadai is always to the left. He's always to his left, and he's always there. And there's many temples still in Koladweep, Navadweep area that depict that. And there's many songs Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written about that relationship. And it's quite difficult to wrap the mind around. They kind of just no holds barred. You hear about that in this world, but that it doesn't. It's not even realistic. In that particular pastime, at that place, and at that time, that was the great secret It was that Gadadhar Pandit was there adoring, adoring, adoring constantly in mind, body, and words to serve, read him the Bhagavatam, give him so many things, facilitate these pastimes, just adoring Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he's such a beautiful personality to hear about and to also try to emulate as far as possible to serve our Lord. Sri Gadadhar Pandit Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Goloka Nanda Ki Jai.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Vipan Vikayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Adipurusham
Page 50. Manasa deha geha yakichumo apilo tuapade nanda kishore manasa deha. Jivane Marane Sambare Vipare Jivane Marane Sampare Vipare Jivane Marane Sampare Vipare Jivane Marane Dai Mama Gela Tua O Parabarane Dai Mama Gela Tua O Parabarane Maro Virakovi Yoicha Tohara Maro Virakovi Yoicha Tohara Maravirakovi Yoicha Tohara Maravirakovi Yoicha Tohara Nitya Dasa Prakti Tua Harikara Nijanasa Harikara Janmo Vimo Icha Janitor Janmo Vimo Icha Janitor Janmo Vimo Icha Janitor Navi Moe Icha Janitor Bhakta Grihe Jani Janma